Thank you all so much for joining us this morning for some of you, this afternoon for others. I am so excited that everyone can join and be a part of this conversation today. My name is Kaylee Walter. I work at CSP, and I want to welcome you to the first ever conversation of this kind here. And it's part of a greater initiative, but we're calling this the Elevating Leaders, a Women's Empowerment Conversation, celebrating the last day of Women's History Month and celebrating the first anniversary of a scholarship initiative at Concordia University, St. Paul called Elevating Leaders, a Women's Endowed Scholarship. I picked the longest names possible for all of these things. So, but thank you all for being here. We launched this scholarship about a year ago on CSP Day, and we promoted it again this CSP Day, and many of you helped lift up this scholarship with your advocacy, with your financial support. And I am thrilled to report that in just 1 year, we've been able to raise $55,000 for this scholarship and have even more coming in pledges and whatnot. And so this is just the beginning, and we're very, very excited with where things are headed. The goal of today in this webinar is to not only bring this great group of folks together and encourage one another and kind of share in the spirit of what this scholarship is, but we also wanted to bring together this group of panelists, these incredible and influential leaders, to share a little bit with us today. So we can each kind of go out and be leaders in our little corners of the world too, hopefully with those, a takeaway or two, maybe even 5, we'll see. So our panelists today will be sharing some personal stories. They're going to be offering advice, how they approach challenges, how they navigate opportunities, and just some other ways that they lift up women in the workplace and lift up their colleagues in their workplace and communities and beyond. A couple of very small housekeeping things before we get started. So my colleague, Billy Schultz, is here as well. He is going to be monitoring both the chat feature and the Q&A feature. I think they're two of the same thing, essentially. So if you do have a question from any participants, feel free to chat those in there. He'll be monitoring it. And then toward the end, as time allows, we'll be going through some of those questions. And I think that's really it. That's our big housekeeping thing. So please, yeah, feel free to chat or even chat with one another if that works for you. I'm going to introduce our esteemed panelists today in alphabetical order, just because otherwise, how do you make it fair? I don't know. So to start us off, I am pleased to introduce you to Dr. Kimberly Craig. She is the Vice Provost of CSP Global and a faculty member of the College of Business and Technology at CSP. She has more than 25 years of experience leading teams in higher education and the corporate sector, and is passionate about creating partnership opportunities for women that lead to academic, personal, and professional transformation. Dr. Craig received her bachelor's in criminal justice from Bemidji State and received her master's in leadership and doctorate in education from CSP. So welcome, Dr. Craig. Next is Dr. Sherry Kollmann. She is the Associate Vice Chancellor of Digital Learning at New Mexico State University and has more than 20 years of combined experience in business and higher education. She received her bachelor's from Bethel College, her master's from CSP, and an MD and PhD from the University of Oklahoma. Dr. Kollmann is a strategic leader who applies her research in education and innovative practices to develop measurable programs that foster equal learning opportunities for all. Welcome, Dr. Kollmann. Next is Carrie Meyer, Doctor of Audiology. She is the Director of Clinical Programs at Amplifon Hearing Healthcare. Dr. Meyer has more than 30 years of clinical experience diagnosing assessments with hearing loss, tinnitus, and hearing aid evaluation, and many more. Dr. Meyer is a member of the Coding and Reimbursement Committee for the Minnesota Academy of Audiology, as well as serving as a member of CSP's Board of Regents, where she also chairs the academic committee. She was recently appointed to the American Board of Audiology's Board of Directors. So welcome, Carrie, Dr. Meyer. Julie Owen is the Chief Operating Officer at Innovative Office Solutions and previously served 2 decades at Best Buy, where she held leadership roles in strategic planning, merchandising, digital strategy, entertainment, consumer relations, and marketing and advertising. Julie serves as the board chair for the YWCA of Minneapolis and of Cornerstone Advocacy Service, in addition to serving as trustee for Dunwoody College of Technology, a board member for the InSports Foundation, the University of Minnesota Consulting Enterprise, and Minitum. I'm probably not pronouncing that one correctly, Julie, and I do apologize. Julie received her bachelor's in organizational management from CSP. Welcome, Julie. And last but certainly not least is Joyce Cowdrill. She is a graduate student at CSP working toward her doctorate in education leadership and administration. She received her bachelor in biology from Jackson State University and a master's in microbiology from the University of Minnesota. Joyce started her career as a microbiologist in food manufacturing and became a clinical microbiologist at Minnesota Regions Hospital. She now serves in the medical device industry as a senior regulatory document control specialist for the cardiology group at Boston Scientific. Joyce is a recipient of Boston Scientific's CEO Winning Spirit Award for her volunteer work with the external strategy team dedicated to combating institutional racism, promoting equity initiatives, and advancing meaningful change in our communities. Welcome, Joyce, and again, welcome all. Thank you again for being here today. So I feel like I just read like the greatest list of accomplishments ever. So we're gonna jump right in to keep an eye on time today. And I'm going to ask you all to answer what it means to you personally to be a leader. We heard from some of your many leadership roles and would love to know more from you. What does it mean to be a leader? And we're going to start with Dr. Craig. So Kim, if you can kick us off.
Yes, I'm just trying to find that unmute button that I should know about. So thank you, Kaylee, for asking me to join this panel. I feel very fortunate to be able to speak to this group. And this is a great question about what it means to be a leader. And to me, being a leader is it's such a huge responsibility. And it's one that I never take lightly. And for me, being a leader means that I'm responsible for creating a culture of care. That's so important for me to be able to build that culture, that people feel cared for, that I'm communicating an authentic vision where others really do feel inspired by the work that they're doing, and then also creating an environment where people feel valued, and then at the same time that people they feel like they're held accountable and that they are. And probably most importantly, I would say for me, being a leader means that I'm intentionally creating more leaders. And leadership is hard and nobody is perfect, but when leadership works, it is really amazing to see the growth that can happen in people and in organizations.
Thank you. And now we're going to kick it off to Joyce.
Thank you, Kaylee. I too appreciate being here today. It's an honor and a privilege. Excellent question. I am a servant leader who facilitates transformations to bridge communities and build organizational equity through diversity of thought and mission advancement. So I believe those are strategic components of a leader: strength of character and courage, as oftentimes we must be willing to stand alone in the face of adversity. Likewise, I too believe it is a terrific responsibility with accountability. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and Dr. Meyer.
Thank you. I appreciate this opportunity. It's wonderful to be with these women and to be with all of you. Thank you so much again. Leadership for me, I will be frank with you, came to me a little bit later in life. The reason being, I think, is motherhood, managing my children, and then also managing a career didn't give me a lot of time or space to actually think about leadership. But as I progressed through my career and as I started raising two daughters on my own, I realized that the best way to be a leader is to serve as an example, right? Then as I moved forward as an example, be polite, be kind, those simple things that we teach our kids when they're very, very young. As I realized that, then I started to also realize my position of privilege, right? I'm a white woman, I am college educated. So this gives me an opportunity to create space for others. So lead by example. So some things that I've noticed that came up that I want to talk about just a little bit that I'm doing with my team now that I'm enjoying so much is just very simple things. Leading by example with communication, leaving that opportunity with space for others, allowing those diverse opinions. That's how we lead by example. Other things as well is, how do we negotiate? How do we handle conflict? We can lead by showing others that there can be kindness, that there can be compassion, but we can still manage conflict without seceding our own ability to have respect and be seen for our value and our expertise. And then finally, there's just such very simple things, leading by example with how we treat others, and even for our women colleagues, little simple things of helping them with how do you present yourself, those kind of things. So I think that one of the primary opportunities that we have as women, especially as well-educated women, is to simply do nothing more than to lead by example.
No, I was having trouble finding my mute button. Thank you, Dr. Meyer. And Julie.
Hello all. Yes, it's great to be here and so excited to support CSP today. Leadership's so interesting, right? I think that leadership happens on so many levels, and I think about it in terms of it's always thinking and acting with more than just yourself in mind. And so that can be in whatever situation that you're in. There's kind of a quote that I like about the biggest lever for change is not a change in self-belief, but a fundamental change in the way one sees and regards one's connections with and obligations to others. That minute that you get outside of yourself and you take notice of who's in the room and what else is happening, it puts you in a leadership position, whether informal or formal. And so those things that many of you said already, but caring about that experience in others and taking action and the things that you believe in. You know, being a leader is oftentimes the first, when you make that first step out of the gate and you start to create movement, and really valuing learning from differences. And we see especially today that very important notion of needing to be able to hear and listen to others who have different experiences than ourselves. And how do we incorporate that and bring people together, even with all those differences? And then kind of that age old, but being open and curious. And as we advance in our careers, we feel like we've learned a lot of lessons. And I know I have to still remind myself every day to be more open and more curious as there's so many things changing in our world today.
Thank you, Julie. And Dr. Kollmann.
Thank you, Kaylee, for asking me to be here today. I too, amongst all of these fabulous women, find this to be an honor to speak to this group. For me, in regards to leadership, as a first generation student, I was a leader at a very, very young age. And so even in high school, I was leading a group of people in a local restaurant that I ran. And so I've had the opportunity to really transform and reflect over many, many years in my leadership style, and so early on, I was probably a bit more militant, and that's because of age, right? You wanted the respect, and you had to, in my mind at that time, really had to be militant in order to get, folks to listen to you. But through that, I've almost went through every stage of leadership and transformed and evolved over the years. And where I've really landed is being authentic and making sure that, a lot of people talk about the golden rule, but I like to emphasize the golden rule plus, which is treating people as they want to be treated, right? And meeting them where they're at, because everyone is in a different place. And, the other piece of that too is illustrating my own flaws and illustrating the things that I don't know. Because it's okay to say that as a leader, right? And so I think for me and the team and the culture that I'm building is really giving people some autonomy and flexibility to be themselves, to really move in the direction where they want to move, And how do I help facilitate that? Right. And then how do I create that culture that allows people to express and share their feelings where they feel safe to be able to do that, where if they have a crucial conversation with me, that I'm not going to do anything to harm their career or their trajectory. And I think as leaders, you know, we should never stop learning, and we should never stop growing. There's never an end point to it. And so the minute you think that is the minute you probably shouldn't be a leader anymore, because you have to continue growing.
Thank you so much. I just heard about that, like Golden Rule Plus, at a conference last month, and they called it the Platinum Rule. But it's just neat that this is getting out there more, of thinking of others first, and even incorporating it into little phrases like, yeah, Platinum Rule. Thank you again. Thank you all for being here and for your thoughtful answers. So as I mentioned at the intro, a lot of this is born out of this scholarship initiative that Concordia launched last year. And it's kind of boiling it down to the bare bones of what it is. It is a scholarship initiative for women, but specifically students who are adults, meaning they're going back to school to get maybe their first, second, maybe even third bachelor's degree if they're having some career changes, or they're coming back for master's or doctorate level degrees. And that's really because there's very few financial aid resources currently available to these CSP students. And so this is a new resource to really help lift up these women and help transform not only their own, education, their own career paths, but they're hopefully that transforming their families and what we know about what education can do, and being able to transform communities, because this is a great ripple effect. Someone I talked to, an alum of the university, said once, if you educate a woman, you educate generations. And I believe that. And I think that we all believe that in some way, shape, or form here. And so that's what this scholarship is trying to do, kind of, again, boiling a lot of paperwork and, goals down to like those, is just really making sure that more women can enroll and earn degrees and have that transformation. So with that in mind, I'm going to ask you two questions. You may answer one or both in your answer. But those questions are: what excites you personally about the Elevating Leaders Women's Endowed Scholarship? And why do you believe it's important to lift up women? And today we're going to start with Dr. Meyer. You get to go first.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. And I know Kaylee knows this already, but this is the part that excites me the most. I was a single mom for 12 years, and I'm an audiologist. And so one of the little things, I shouldn't say little, it was a great big thing that happened in 2007 when I already had a master's degree and was acting as an audiologist practicing, was the American Academy of Audiologists changed our degree program. You could still continue to practice with the master's degree, but the entry-level degree became a doctoral degree. So I was 45 years old. I had two little girls that I was fully responsible for. And all of a sudden, in this practice that I had worked in for over 20 years, much younger women started getting promoted above me, started getting paid more, and were given leadership positions. And so I looked at it and went, well, guess what we're going to have to do here? We're going to have to go back to school. So I did. But to Kaylee's point, there was no funding for me. I was a working person with a reasonably good salary. I also had a mortgage and two kids to take care of, and there was no funding for me. And so I literally had to go out to the bank and take a mortgage against my house to get my degree. I did it. One of the absolute best things I ever did for myself and for my career, launched me into huge opportunities. But the really amazing thing that Kaylee brought up about educating women and thus educating the families, not only did I have this amazing opportunity that has done wonders for me, and I hope nobody ever stops learning, I taught my daughters how incredibly important that was. And that has happily propelled them hugely forward in their lives. My younger one is in her PhD program right now. My older one is a 30-year-old lawyer who just passed the federal bar. So I think we set some pretty good examples there. The other thing that I want to talk about, that I did a little bit of research on this, audiology is a heavily weighted female field, very similar to teaching and nursing. So I thought I was going to do a little bit more investigation. And so I looked into just women leadership across all industries and across all professional fields. And in any industry, business, or corporation where women lead consistently, Rockefeller Foundation found that there is a decrease in the gender wage gap. Okay, I'd like it to be eliminated, but apparently decreased. There is more policy transformation, and consistently there's an improved diversity in hiring. So this kind of lifting women up and putting these scholarships to have them readily available is simply going to benefit everyone.
Thank you. I appreciate you sharing your story with us as well. And Dr. Kollmann.
You know, for me, I think I've been lifted up by other women. You know, the story that I like to tell is, you know, again, coming from a first gen background, I was surrounded by very strong women. My mother happened to be a teenage mother, raised between a mother and a grandmother. And then I also had a sister who really kind of set the example for what it meant to break a cycle. She taught us how to really kind of speak our voice, right? So when you're raised by a teenage mother, a lot of times other things are very intimidating to them. And so we had to find our voice. And how we did that is we found our voice through our older sister. So there's three of us. And so when we talk about, you know, women leading other women and why this is so important, I think it's, you know, for me, all of this really started with her. And I think she has set such a high bar for how we create our own lives, right? So I would have never went on, I would have just, you know, ran restaurants probably the rest of my life. It was something I was good at early on. And you know, I think, you know, for me, all of this stems, the reason I donate, the reason I do the things I do, really, it's because of her. And that person happens to be Dr. Kim Craig.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Well, Dr. Craig, would you like to go next?
How am I supposed to follow that up when I want to cry? Thank you. Can somebody else
Yes,
answer? Thank you.
absolutely. No worries. I didn't know if it made sense to hit to you next or to give you a
Yeah,
minute.
no, I
so-
just need to compose myself. Like, that was so beautiful. Thank you. But I just need a second.
Absolutely. Joyce, would you please step in?
Sure. So I too have a similar experience as far as being a divorced woman and transitioning from being a stay-at-home mom back into the workforce, the paid workforce, I should say. At that time, my daughters were very young, so they were elementary age. And I had to carefully weigh my options between going into debt because I wanted to go to school in order to, you know, advance my education in order to get better opportunities, or do I purchase a home? And so having that option to weigh there let me know there's something wrong with the educational system. You know, well, I knew something was wrong with it before, but that really honed in with me, that financial barriers to education is real and we have to do something about it. So I made the choice at that time to just save for, you know, being able to purchase a home. And then I just believed that there would be opportunities for me to go back to school. And so I decided to take out loans to go back to school after I was able to get the house. And having that home and being able to establish that for my daughters was key. My point in helping and being excited about the Women's Endowed Scholarship is because there's over 70 women, there's nearly 70 women, according to statistics, in higher education just in the state of Minnesota alone. We have to be intentional about helping those women alleviate the financial barrier to go back to school to better their lives. And so to, the other point that was made earlier, not only do we impact the trajectory of families and communities and generations to come, but cities, states, and nations are impacted when women are lifted up. And I think it is so important that we, champion that. And I, as a woman, as a Black woman, have had help from men as well as women coming alongside to sponsor, to support, to help give me a voice in rooms and in situations where I was not allowed to be, to champion my cause as wanting to go further in my education, wanting to go, further in my work life, my career, because being in the hard sciences is what it was deemed then as a microbiologist. Once you leave, which I did leave for a period of time to be that stay-at-home mom, you're then considered in that field to have lost your credibility, so to speak. And so it's a penalization that women in the sciences, in the biological sciences incur as, wanting to go and start a family. So I, had to deal with that. And it was really hard, to get back into it, but having those allies and those sponsors and those persons saying, yes, we want to help you, we want to champion you. So women helping women, men helping women, those persons that are in those power positions is key, that they lead by example and help others. And so I had that help and I'm very grateful for that. And so now, likewise, my daughters have watched my journey and they've seen how, yes, you have to be courageous to speak up, let your voice be heard, let others know what it is you need to succeed. And if they have those resources available to then offer them. So now my daughters, I have one that's actually graduating from Gustavus Adolphus College in May. Very excited for her. And then my youngest daughter is at Howard University. So they have watched their mom's journey and have been able to apply some of those same strategies to their life. And so I'm very thankful for that.
Joyce, I remember you saying, we were talking about this panel before, like in preparation, but you're a current doctorate student at CSP, and I asked you, like, oh, are you gonna walk when you're done? And you're like, oh, absolutely. I want my daughters to watch me do this and show them it's possible. And I said, yes, more of this.
Yes.
So thank you, Joyce. And Julie.
Yes, okay. So I have a kind of a parallel experience as well of I had started my bachelor's work in my late teens and early 20s, but walked away from college when I was trying to navigate relationships, where I was living, and some of that confusion that sometimes happens in the early 20s. And I walked away from college, and I was always someone that everyone was sure that I would go to college and finish college. I had been a good student in high school, and it kind of threw me for a loop a little bit. And I didn't really ever have an idea about what that entry point would be to get back and finish. And similar to Dr. Meyer, I was in my professional career, and I was sitting with a newer leader that I was working for, and we were looking for candidates. She was sorting resumes. She had 2 piles. And I said, well, I don't understand. I can't find the commonality of that second pile. And she said, well, none of them have degrees. I'm not hiring anyone without a degree. And so I had to tell her, as a new employee on her team, I didn't have my college degree. And it really hit me in the face that I had kind of been under the impression of, if I work hard, I'm still going to be able to have the same access, and realized clearly that there could be some barriers for me. And I found the CSP program, and it was a miracle. to be in that class and to be with a number of other people. The cohort we had was phenomenal, and we all were people that everyone thought we had our degree, but we didn't. And to have that group of people to say, we can do this, and really help bolster our confidence was amazing. And so when this opportunity came up about really creating a space and some extra financial assistance for people in the same place, for women in the same place, that would allow them that opportunity, I was fortunate enough to have some resources for the financial part of it, but the emotional component of it and everything together, and the adjustments that we make in our lives when you make a decision like that to go back to school, it's complicated, right? We all have our challenges. So anything that helps is a big deal. So, and I think anytime, we've said it many times here, anytime that we're creating access for someone through education, and if we could do something like this scholarship that provides more resources, it's so meaningful. And some statistics I was kind of refreshing myself on as well. Yes, we've made progress, but it's still 82 cents on the dollar. And one of the biggest issues that contributes to people's financial stability is their debt ratio. And when you take on debt, especially after you may have, like, am I going to mortgage my house? What am I going to do? All of those things oftentimes set people back, and anything that we can do to alleviate that, especially for women who oftentimes are primary caregivers, it's just so meaningful. So I'm thrilled about this scholarship for CSP and what doors it's going to open up.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing your story as well. And Dr. Craig.
Yes, I think I've composed myself now, but I am so excited about the Women's Leadership Scholarship, and I'm proud that the university is able to offer this, and that we are promoting it, and really working hard to create funds to support women. And I could talk for hours about why this is important, and as everybody mentioned on the meeting here, is that there's such significant benefits to the student, families, communities, and the economy when we really do invest in women. And I say this all the time, but I just have so much respect for all women. Women are amazing. Working mothers, women going back to school while they're trying to raise their families, such as the people, amazing women on the call here, and trying to work full time. And we have women who are in that sandwich generation who are trying to raise children and caring for their parents and other family members. And then also just the single women who are navigating life independently and just challenging the norms. And I have such a great privilege to work directly with our students and with great women here at the university. And I see firsthand how strong and resilient women are. And I am truly inspired by all of them every day. And it is just so important that we continue to find ways to provide women additional pathways to education and pathways to continue to upskill, because we do know that when women are educated, women are empowered then to make their own decisions. And this then creates confidence, which creates courage, which creates social mobility. And then, it's the real change that happens when we're able to do that for women.
Thank you. So I think for the sake of time, I might skip a question, and then if we have time, I'll come back to it. So looking now kind of at some of the workplace pieces, because not only are we, helping or having these degrees and helping women achieve their educational goals, it's usually to propel toward greater life goals and greater career goals. And certainly that is not easy for anyone, but it can be additionally challenging for women. And so I want to ask a question about how you personally tackle some challenges in your workplace. And it can be, pretty extreme things, certainly like any discrimination, whatnot, or just even little things sometimes as someone just undermining maybe your expertise. I can give a quick example, just since I think it can be hard to name things specifically, but I often find that can help like ground one and like, oh, I've gone through something similar. In my last job, I had to present to a big panel of all of the executive leaders about once a month on a big grant making project I was working on for them. And as I went on sitting kind of before them once a month, I realized I was speaking faster and faster and faster. And upon reflection, why am I doing this? I know what I'm talking about. And I realized it's because I was, whether a young or a woman, subconsciously, at some point, I always got cut off. And so I kept speaking faster to try and fill it, like get as much in as I could before I was going to get cut off. And I didn't really know how to tackle that. I was 26 and I just talked faster. That was my solution. So what advice do you have as you've come up against some of these challenges in the workplace? And we are going to start with, Joyce.
Sure. So I've had quite an experience in that realm, being a Black woman in corporate America. So questioning my level of expertise, I've had, several examples of that, but one that I would share today is, being a part of cross-functional collaborative teams where we're all subject matter experts. And so whenever we're contributing to the conversation about our portion of where we're, the expert, I always had to cite work instruction source or, standard operating procedure. I always had to cite the source. I could give the information, but then I had to cite the source. But I noticed none of my colleagues had to do that. They would give the information and then it would be taken at face value. And that was just a pattern of behavior throughout working on several projects that I noticed. And I thought, okay, what is really going on here? So that, microaggression, I noticed and I was like, this is not okay. So how do I handle that? In that instance, I had to know work instruction or the SOP. I had to come with that information. There was nothing I could immediately do to have that cease, but I did talk with the project manager one-on-one and pointed it out. Just asked, observe the meeting and see what you, discern. What do you observe? And, he had to come back and say, you're absolutely right. This is going on. This is not something that you think or have made up, but this is actually happening. And he, was embarrassed and because he was the team lead and had not picked up on that. But at any rate, those are the types of things that we as women sometimes face. We're not taken seriously. And we have to always come with proof, so to speak. And so that was one such instance. So for me personally, I'm a woman of faith. So prayer and is key for me, daily prayer, just grounding myself, making sure that I'm not acting out in an emotional response, but, really looking at, what can I do to improve? So coming with that base of prayer and then seeking wise counsel, knowing that I don't have all the answers. So how have other women that have faced these challenges dealt with it? And then also being humble, humble enough to assume positive intent and extend that trust, to believe the best. And then when it's shown to be that it's otherwise, then, making those decisions thereafter. And then having that courage to respectfully voice my concerns. Again, one-on-one often works better than in a group setting. Deciding not to absorb their toxic behavior, as they are the one with the problem, not myself. And then addressing the patterns of, if it becomes a pattern of behavior, then reviewing the company policies and contacting HR or an anonymous line and handling it from that perspective so that others will not have to endure the same treatment. So that has been my experience.
Thank you so much for sharing. I appreciate the one-on-one approach first. I think that's just a good thing to keep in mind whenever possible, right? As long as it's safe and whatnot. Thank you. Julie, would you take it away next?
Yes, challenges in the workplace. So those are ongoing, right? There's not just a period of time of challenge. But I really liked what Joyce talked about, is that it's so interesting because I was in a pretty male dominated industry and there was less overt kinds of things that would happen, but on a daily basis, the assumption of the men will do the talking in the room. It was interesting. I worked for a retail company. It seemed like they were all big men. So it just like even the space that got taken up in a room was just felt dominating and difficult to like, so how do you find your voice in that? And then get to the point of what Joyce said is, do I have to be more prepared all the time than everyone else in the room? Which the answer is that still happens. But the couple things that I really try to keep close with that is taking seriously what's occurring, but not taking it personally. And I think if I learned anything throughout my career, I would say in 80% of the time, most of the people I encountered were oblivious to what they were doing or what they were part of, or maybe no one had ever even talked to them about male privilege or even just space privilege and all of those kinds of things. Like there just were not in their ecosystem of what they were thinking, whether they should have been or shouldn't have been. I really tried to figure out ways to step back from that so then I could figure out what I wanted to do about it. I didn't probably stylistically, and people do this different ways. I didn't necessarily confront in the moment, confront in the room. I usually like to think about it and figure out what approach do I want. And probably the most important thing was really creating some allies about the experiences and things that were happening, reaching out to others and validating what I was seeing, and then understanding, okay, what might be the best approach? Because sometimes I didn't really have to tackle something on my own. We could tackle it as something we were trying to be better at as a company. But to the same extent, taking seriously the places where you do think there's a barrier and using, again, another set of resources, whether it be human resources or a mentor or finding allies in another department, a safe place. All of those tools can be really, really effective, whether you're tackling how you're presenting a business problem, you're tackling why you're not getting promoted, you're tackling somebody not treating you well. In all those cases, what I was fortunate enough to learn in the larger company I was in, if I spread myself out, there were people out there that could help me and help me navigate. And sometimes I could get there sideways more effectively than I could get there front head on, which is not to say head on doesn't work sometimes, but sometimes being strategic about it can be really, really helpful. And I think more than ever, the community of women in businesses and in communities and in education is so strong. Like there is a place. And so if anybody on this call is in a situation that you're tackling, I bet there's help a couple arms length away. It might just take a little courage to kind of reach out in a new direction, because there are a lot of women out there and men that are really committed to making a difference around those challenges.
Thank you so much. Dr. Kollmann.
Yeah, I think for me, one of the things that I even tell my leaders, whether it's male or female, is setting metrics. And I say that because for the females that work for me, oftentimes just kind of what Joyce was saying is that you have to prove yourself over and over and over again. And so like even for me in higher ed, I helped a institution build a very successful online presence. They're one of the top 7 in the country. But even then, like even with that, I still have to continually prove why I'm doing things, or any of those above things, right? But one of the things that I do, and I think it's a really good strategy, is setting those metrics and then constantly bringing those metrics forward and showing like how you are achieving or exceeding those metrics. And then that really eliminates or minimizes at least people questioning what you know or you don't know. Right. And so that's one piece of it. But then adding to that is I always have an expertise that I continue to work on every single day. right? We all have degrees, but all of those degrees have dates on that, right? And so it doesn't mean like, when I graduated from the University of Oklahoma with my PhD, I was an expert in this one area during that time frame. But I've continued to hone in on that skill ever since I graduated. And so, for any women females on this call, don't stop. Don't stop learning and engaging in that field and that level of expertise. Where we still have a long way to go in society. And I think for females, just always making sure you have one level up in that knowledge and that expertise, so that you can, be a part of those conversations.
Thank you. Absolutely. Yeah, Dr. Craig.
Yeah, Sherry, Sherry, Joyce, Julie, I love this conversation. Just so many valuable points, and just to kind of play off of what Sherry had said too. And so in September, I'm going to turn 50 years old. And, over the last decade, I've learned so much about myself and what it means to be a woman in a leadership position. And I would say the greatest gift that I have given myself is really knowing the value that I bring to the workplace. And that has truly helped me so much. And part of that is like that continuous learning and being an expert in an area and always leaning in. And honestly, I didn't always know my professional worth. And, I truly took that time to understand that part of myself. And when you do that, you have a level of confidence that comes with that. You're able to challenge, and you just have that courage and bravery to do that. And you're able to take up the space that you need. And I think one thing that is, I pay really close attention to this is women often underestimate their value and their talents. And that is one of the things that I try really hard to do with the women around me, is to help them identify their strengths. And we talk a lot about superpowers and to find that fire. And there's so many stereotypes about what women should be in the world and what they should be in the workplace. And to speak to what everybody else has said, we've made so much progress, but we still have a long way to go to see that real equity in the workplace.
Thank you. And Dr. Meyer.
Well, Kim, I just turned 60, so I got you. But here's the thing too, you know what? And I know exactly why you're saying what you're saying. I mean, we can joke about our age, but at the same time, I have daughters who are young professionals, and I recognize and appreciate my daughter who's a lawyer, and she'll say to me, "Mom, I can't say that," and I'm like, "You're the toughest woman I know. Why can't you?" And she's like, "Because I don't have gray hair." Okay, because she doesn't have that gravitas, yes, but I do. And so 2 examples I can give you. One's a little sassy, and I have found, and anybody who knows me for more than 2 minutes knows that I tend to use humor, hopefully to my advantage. So for instance, when I was in clinical practice, this happened, believe it or not, all the time, which frustrated the energy right out of me, which was always tended to be older patients, of course, and they say one of 2 things. Number one, my least favorite one: "Are you a real doctor?" And I said, wow, if I'm not, I spent a lot of time in school. Okay. And then that was my little joke. But then I would review with them, "This is what I've done. I've been doing this for 30 years. This is how I graduated." And then I always took the time to look them right in the eye and say, "If I was a male audiologist sitting across the table from you, would you have asked me that same question?" Just to kind of make that accountability. Okay. And I recognized, as a younger woman, perhaps I wouldn't, but as a woman at my age, I feel it incumbent upon me to call that behavior out. Then I'll give you an example from my current work situation. And I love the company I work for, and they do amazing things with inclusion and diversity. But this happened to me shortly after I joined. There is a fractionally older male with the exact same credentials as me. We were all in a meeting with several state legislators, actually, working on some healthcare rules. And my colleague was introduced as Dr. So-and-so, and I was introduced as Carrie. And so I immediately said, you know, I am Carrie Meyer. I'm also a doctor of audiology, as is my colleague. Okay, just making that point just so that everyone in the room was aware that there had been a little something there. And again, I realized I work from a position of power because of my age. The other thing I did take a time to say to myself, as to the colleague who introduced me that way after, I said, I'm not going to take offense with this, but I did draw that to your attention. And the reason I did that was twofold. A, that was disrespectful to me. And B, I know you have daughters. And I know you wouldn't want that to happen to them. So drawing that personal connection for them. And again, I recognize that that's something that I've come to with age and maturity, but that's something I think we owe ourselves and the women younger than us.
Thank you so much for sharing. So I think we only have time for one more question. I think I overplanned. There was so much more great things I think we can talk about today, but maybe sometime down the line, we'll do a part 2. So combining 2 questions here, kind of maybe a 1-minute answer each. Just what advice do you have either for a woman or someone who wants to break into a male-dominated field? So what's some just practical advice that you have? Especially, I mean, you're all coming from different specialties. We have medicine, higher education, science, and business represented here. And so I love that. And so kind of thinking with those lenses, yes, what advice do you have for a woman or someone entering that male-dominated field? And then, or you may also think about our students. CSP has these incredible students, majority women actually in the adult spaces. Those who are getting their degrees who are also working full-time, as we've talked about. So what advice would you have for them? So both or either one. I'm throwing a lot at you in the last couple of minutes here. Dr. Craig, would you kick us off, please?
Absolutely. I think I'll tackle that second question and just provide some advice for those working students. Balancing school and life, as we know, all of us on the phone, is very challenging. And there will be times when you're going to want to quit. And my advice is to really understand and know your why. Really understand why it's important for you to earn your degree, whether that's to provide a better life for yourself or your family, or to obtain your dream job, or to make social change, any type of change. But to really know that and write it down, laminate it, put it on your mirror, your desk, your computer, because if you do know what you're working towards, your why will always give you motivation to persist through any challenge. And that is actually an exercise that I have my students do as they're just starting their 4-year degree, and they're worried and they're scared. And it always goes back to your why. If you are confident in your why and you know what you're working towards, the hard work will always be worth it.
Thank you so much. Dr. Kollmann.
Yeah, I mean, I'll tackle the first question. I think for anyone on this call, I think the best advice I could give, especially for females, as you get into a workplace, find a like-minded person that you can collaborate with. And that you can really have hard conversations with, that you can vent to, that you can, and it's a safe space, right? So that in the face of adversity, because you will face adversity, so that there's not a question if, it's a question when, that you can remain calm and that you can remain composed. But you do need someone that you can bounce ideas off of, and you can have very honest and open conversations with. And if you tend to find someone that has been at that organization for a while to even help you navigate the politics, that'll serve you very, very well.
Thank you so much. Julie.
Well, I have a huge echo to everything Dr. Kollmann said. I'll slightly riff on that for a minute of, I think in the moment, where you're in the middle of it and you're trying to figure it all out, to remember you're not alone. And even if you are alone in what appears to be your circle, there are so many people that want to help. And you might not realize when I went back to school and I was working 60 hours a week, I thought there's no way that I'm going to fit this in. And I was trying to be part of an organizational change and I didn't want to miss anything. And I found a couple of allies in the workplace that they were as committed to me finishing the degree and making the whole schedule work, that I wouldn't have expected. And there were also some people in kind of my second tier community that also were huge allies, and they helped me brainstorm on, what, I know it feels like you don't have any solutions in this place where you're stuck, but they come up with something. And I know I always like to think I can do it myself, and I'm smart enough to figure it out all by myself. That I think women take that on a lot. That we should be able to do it alone, and don't do it alone. You're not alone, and there is an army of women behind you that want you to succeed.
A great reminder. Thank you, Julie. Dr. Meyer.
Well, I'll take the advice for working students because I think I can speak to that very personally. First and foremost, especially any of you who are working moms, you are already the best and most organized time management keepers that anybody already knows. There is no, if you're going to give me 15 people to pick for any project, give me a working mom any day because those ladies know how to handle it. Okay. And so you already have built so many skills. So first thing I would say, rather than looking forward, look back a little bit. Look at what you've already done. Look at what got you here today. And it was you. And it was all the people around you. And then the other thing, my yoga teacher said this to me the other day, and I thought, this is brilliant for any woman who's doing anything. Doesn't matter if you're partnered or not partnered, if you have children or don't have children. Yes, I love Kim's why. Why are you doing that? And I would add to that who. And her statement was this: before you start anything today, why don't you take a moment to look at whose life will be improved by your work here today? Okay, so that may be your colleagues, that may be the patients you serve, the students you serve, but it will be your family, especially your children, because you're leading by example. So yes, you'll benefit yourself and hopefully financially and economically and make a better life for everybody involved, but you are showing them how strong you are and how strong they can be.
Thank you so much. That's so important. And Joyce.
Yes. So of course, I can identify with both of these, being, working mother, as being in grad school, and then also having been in a male-dominated field. So I will go with, this I think can be applied to both situations. So have a resolve. You have to have a resolve to bring your authentic self to the space. It is very much needed. That otherness that you bring that sometimes make you feel like an outsider or uncomfortable because of how others are responding to it. Do not hide from that, embrace it, own it, bring it. Commit to do the work necessary. So in that instance, I had shared with you where I had to know more. I had to bring the knowledge of the work instructions and the SOPs. So commit to doing the work, whatever that may look like. Establish a support network. Family, friends, faith community, co-workers, mentors, sponsors. That is so key. And then study, you want to get with a like-minded group of people that can help you, hone your skills and abilities, be it in school studying for different subjects, or if it's in the workplace, taking those trainings, talking about those trainings, how can you apply them to your current situation, and having that open communication. Being courageous to bring your voice to the table, to the space, and communicate, with those that are in those power positions, what it is that you need to succeed, what it is that others on the team may need to succeed. because I have often been in situations where others were not confident enough to speak up for themselves. And so sometimes I was that person that, advocated for them, back to, lifting others up. We just need to be able to do that for one another. And in those spaces, you'll know when you're the one that needs to speak up versus somebody else if they're not. But all of that, I believe, is key for us to be able to do, in order to succeed. It's just so important. But again, thank you for the opportunity to be able to speak to you and to, impart those strategies. And hopefully some of you will be, your lives will be terrifically impacted by doing so.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Joyce, and thank you all for being here today. I'm personally very inspired by each of you. I'm so glad that you could share some of your, I think just like a fraction of your very vast wisdom with all of us. And I just want to take a moment to thank everyone for joining online. If you would like to find out more about the Women's Endowment, you can find out more on one.csp.edu. That's ONE1. And you can also give if that's something that you would like to do and help support more women with these incredible educational stories like what we're trying to do as part of this scholarship. And I think proof of that we all heard in these incredible stories today. So thank you for joining all those who did. We had almost 50 people joining us live, which is great on this Friday lunchtime webinar. And thank you to these incredible group of women here. So thank you. And hopefully we'll do this again sometime.